Welcome. This is the second part of my three-part series on meeting with ICBC for the first time. I'd like to talk to you about your preparing to give a statement to ICBC. There's four issues that ICBC is going to deal with you when they ask you about your injury. Firstly, how did the accident happen? Secondly, what is your pre-accident history of related problems that you might have injured? Thirdly, what areas have you injured? And fourthly, facts relating to your loss of income claim. So let's go through them one by one in terms of preparation. Firstly, how the accident happened. If you are a driver and you have a passenger with you, go out and attend the accident scene, but each of you should attend separately. It may benefit the passenger to attend, even though there's no question of fault, because he may be able to be of some assistance in proving that the driver was not at fault. But do not talk about how the accident happened and do not attend together. If you do that, a legal principle may apply, and that legal principle is called collusion, which is when two people talk about their story together, try to get their story to fit, and if that happens, your credibility could be shot, and neither of you will be of any value in terms of giving evidence on the subject later. So attend separately, but try to do a bit of mathematics out there. Try to recreate the accident. So drive through the accident scene, and for example, ask yourself, go at the speed that you were going before the accident occurred. How many seconds before the collision occurred did you first see the other vehicle? Where was the other vehicle when you first saw it? How far back from the intersection, or how far back from the point of collision? How far back from the point of collision were you at the time when you first saw the other vehicle? How far back were you when you were able to first apply your brakes? What evasive action did you take? Did you honk your horn if you saw the person might be running a red light or a stop sign? And various other components like this to show, in terms of timing, that you did everything reasonable in the circumstances and you couldn't have avoided the accident, because it does take over 1 second for a person to perceive danger and react to that danger by, for example, applying the brakes or turning the steering wheel. So there's 1 second, and that 1 second, depending on your speed, can take a certain amount of distance to travel. And during that time, really you can do nothing except just perceive and react. So, the second issue is your pre-accident health. This is extremely important for two reasons. One, if you had ongoing problems relating to what your injury is, then the question becomes, what difference did the accident make? The second thing is, if you had a problem earlier, let's say you were injured 3 or 4 years before, but you completely recovered, you may be susceptible to having a much more severe injury this time around. So pre-accident history is very important, and your credibility is tested on this subject. For example, if you say, I don't remember having any pre-accident knee problems, and it turns out that your clinical records show that you attended a physiotherapist for knee problems 2 years before the accident, and there's a mention in your doctor's records a year before the accident of knee problems, that's going to make you look really bad. It's going to make you look like you're a person who may not be completely worthy of belief. So what I'm going to suggest is this. Try to remember who you saw for treatment before the accident for related areas that were injured in this accident. Phone the physio or the chiro's office and ask the secretary if they could give you the period of time that you attended that treating person and how many times you attended. Then you can take that with you to ICBC. Now, when you meet with your family doctor for the first time, that doctor's #1 priority and your #1 priority should be for the doctor to examine you thoroughly. That takes some time, and the doctor's going to take a history as well. So I suggest that at the end of that appointment you say, look, I appreciate you've just spent 15 minutes with me, but I'd like to have another appointment with you as soon as possible so that we could discuss and we could go through together my clinical records, because quite frankly I do believe I had a problem with my knee before the accident, but I cannot remember the timing of it. And I don't want to meet with ICBC until I've refreshed my memory on that. Would you mind if we had another meeting? The doctor won't have a problem with that at all. Try to do it as soon as possible, and don't see ICBC until you've done that. Don't try to push the doctor to do it at the first meeting, because he or she's already spent probably 15 minutes, and that's really at the high end of the amount of time they can spend per person, considering they're paid on a piecework basis, per appointment basis. So the next issue is your wage loss claim. So that depends on the type of claim you have. Let's go through it piece by piece. Let's say you're a standard person who has had a job for several years, gets some overtime, and has a secure job. In that case, you may want to take with you to ICBC your tax returns or your T4s for, say, 2 years before the accident, and also your pay stub with a year to date on it, the last pay stub before you were injured or the one immediately after you were injured. Because ICBC may well need that in terms of deciding how much wage replacement it needs to pay you. If you are self-employed, the most important document is your statement of income and expenses in your tax return. So you may want to go back a few more years, because what you have to show as a self-employed person is the trend line in both your income and your expenses as it relates to that income as a percentage of your income over the past several years. Hopefully you can show that you're on an upward trend line over the last several years. So you might want to bring in your tax returns for the past 4 years before the accident. If you're unemployed or a student at the time of the accident, that's a different situation. In fact, if you're unemployed, you still may well be entitled to benefits, wage loss benefits from ICBC if you'd worked for 6 months of the year before the accident, even though you're unemployed on the day of the accident. So bring in proof to show that you've worked at least 6 months of the year before. In fact, you need proof to show how many weeks or pay periods you worked during that 1 year before the accident and the amount you made in each pay period or week. And then ICBC can calculate how much they have to pay you in wage replacement. Students, a little different situation. You may be at school when you're injured, and you may be arranging a summer job. So if you can bring in evidence, such as letters from somebody saying, I intended to hire this person on such and such a date, and I plan to pay him X amount of dollars, that would be excellent. Plus, if you could bring in a track record to show what you've earned in the last few summers, that would be useful too. T4s would be excellent. Record of employment would be useful too, because it shows the period that you worked. Those are the subjects I'd like to talk to you about in terms of preparation for your statement. My last part of this video series, the third part, will be on the authorizations ICBC asks you to sign and actually giving your statement to ICBC. Thank you.